E agora sim, penso que sim. Ia pedindo também para irem tomando os vossos lugares. Vamos entrar no penúltimo painel deste palco, o The Academy. E agora com um painel sobre integridade nas apostas desportivas, promovido pela SIGA Football Integrity Forum. Num contexto em que as apostas desportivas estão cada vez mais integradas no ecossistema do futebol, este painel discutirá as medidas necessárias para salvaguardar a integridade do desporto. Reunindo vários stakeholders, incluindo reguladores, operadores de apostas, clubes e organizações desportivas, o debate centrar-se-á nos mecanismos existentes para a prevenção da manipulação de resultados e outras formas de corrupção. Serão analisadas as melhores práticas e tecnologias para monitorizar as atividades de apostas e proteger o futebol contra as ameaças externas. Eu vou começar a chamar os nossos oradores. Portanto, contamos primeiro com os contributos de Emanuel Macedo de Medeiros, CEO global da SIGA. Bem-vindo, Emanuel. Pode começar-se a sentar da esquerda para a direita. Boa tarde. Exatamente. Affy Sheikh, Head of Integrity Services na Starlizard. Welcome, Affy.
Thank you very much.
Have a seat, please. E também John Millington, Senior Vice President of Program Delivery na Epic Global Solutions, que não estará presente, mas vai estar por videoconferência. Para moderar este mesmo painel, chamo Julie Kassap, Managing Director da SIGA Women Programme. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you.
The stage is yours.
The stage is ours, so welcome. Sports betting integrity. Hi, John. Good to have you as well in this panel. I would like to step into this topic really fast, and if needed, we can also do a Q&A at the end if you guys have questions. So I will start with you, Emanuel, because we have these amazing partners next to us, Epic Solutions and Starlizard. So I'm very, first of all, curious, and probably the audience as well. Can you explain us what SIGA, in collaboration with these two partners, are doing and what we are offering to this market?
Thank you, Julie. First of all, I would like to express sincere appreciation to the Portuguese League and Fanatic for putting all this show together. It's amazing to be here, being able to review old friendships and listen to so many experts talking about a whole variety of topics that are of extreme relevance. And sports betting integrity is really at the heart because, as I was saying earlier, without integrity, we have no business, and without business, we have no sport. So that is really at the heart, is to preserve the values that we consider to be fundamental, and it is to safeguard the trust of what we see on the pitch, the trust on the protagonists, the trust of the consumers, the trust of the investors. That is the lifeblood of sport, is to safeguard and protect the trust, which means the integrity. What we are doing in order to promote the highest integrity standards, the highest governance standards, and the highest sport integrity standards is to mobilize the international community around a global vision, pursuing a global mission anchored on a set of universal standards. Those universal standards were firstly drafted and approved nearly 8 years ago, and they are, if I can summarize this way, the silver bullet, because they contain not only the key to the problems that we are now experiencing, but they can safeguard sport and the wider industry in terms of the future. And when we look at sports betting, no doubt we understand it's a fast-growing industry, now opening in a regulated manner many markets, Portugal nearly a decade ago, Brazil quite recently. We are both active in both markets, the US as well. But there is a number of worrying symptoms that require our attention, because with opportunities comes also threats. So with these universal standards, we look into all the key constituents and all aspects of the game. In terms of regulation, ensuring a robust, holistic, global regulatory framework, so that when regulating the opening of the market, we have everything under control. Ensuring also that in terms of protection of the consumers and the athletes and the participants, we prevent addiction, which is sometimes an unspoken, invisible threat. Ensuring that there is also a number of mechanisms that enable us to monitor the trends and the irregular betting patterns, investing in training, education, capacity building, not only of the sports organizations and competition organizers, but also the athletes, the coaches, the whole entourage. And then finally ensuring that there is not just level playing field, but there is a convergence of interests so that those who earn from sports betting can also and must also reinvest to safeguard the integrity of sport. In a nutshell, this is what we're doing, and I'm sure that we will be talking about some of our experience, because we see a huge, fast-paced trend towards a new era, but it's a new era where integrity needs to be at the top.
So when did these partners join us, SIGA?
They have joined Epic 2 years ago, and Starlizard nearly
Test you here.
from the beginning, no?
From the beginning.
7 years.
Yeah,
Wow.
nearly a founding member. And so what do we bring? We bring a global solution to a global problem. We give meaning to the word alliance because our members, they have complementary roles. Affy will tell you
Yes.
about what Starlizard is doing, and Epic also, who is a global leader in the prevention of addiction and safeguarding of athletes and other key components of sport. They will also add. But altogether, we have the Swiss Army knife and we have the silver bullet that makes the difference.
Affy, then definitely I'm interested and curious, how did your journey with SIGA started and what is Starlizard doing?
Thanks, Julie. Thanks to the League of Portugal for having us here. It's a real honour to be here in Porto. Thank you very much. So Starlizard Integrity Services, yeah, we've been members of SIGA for a number of years now. We're part of the fight against corruption in sport. We do our bit, and our bit is to investigate match fixing. So we look at evidence of match fixing. We work with sports. In this case, seeing as we're at a football summit, different football governing bodies and law enforcement agencies, police agencies, to give them a heads up when there is a suspicion of a match manipulation having taken place, but also to support the investigative process and ultimately give evidence in a disciplinary environment or a criminal environment, in a court setting. Because ultimately we all want to keep the sport clean. So that's really what we do. And we do that through two real, what I call two crime scenes. When a match manipulation happens, there's usually two crime scenes. One is the betting markets. If people are going to be taking money from match fixing, that's where they take it from, the betting markets. And you can look for patterns. I think, Emanuel, you alluded to irregular betting patterns. So high levels of confidence in unlikely outcomes, which would give match fixers a financial reward. But also, of course, the pitch itself. If you're going to have match fixing, you need someone on the pitch to facilitate it. So we look at a lot of data from betting markets, looking at patterns, looking at irregular amounts of money that are being bet, all sorts of wonderful things that my team of experts are capable of looking at, and also the data from the pitch. So when players or referees are underperforming, we look at why. Okay, now what's the explanation for this? Did the betting market predict that this very unlikely underperformance was going to happen? In those scenarios, we become aware of the possibility of match manipulation happening, and then we work with the sports and all law enforcement accordingly.
Can you expose a couple regions where you see this is happening a lot?
We look at, I think last year we looked at over 65,000 football matches around the world.
Wow.
So we're looking at all regions. the more you look, I suppose there's a hypothesis for the more you find. We don't cover every single league. There's a lot of football being played. 65,000 matches might sound a lot, but there's a lot more being played in the world than that. All sorts of kind of amateur levels and youth levels, which you can find betting markets for, which is, might be a bit of a crazy concept to some people, but there are amateur football matches that there are betting markets on. Can I expose regions? Well, I mean, we look at football in Europe, South America, probably 2, and Asia, three of the key regions for us. A lot of countries. But it's important to say that match fixing isn't a massive percentage when it comes to football matches. I think last year, out of the 65,000 football matches plus that we looked at, 160, off the top of my head, 168 football matches we identified as suspicious, which is a tiny proportion. Thankfully, we can watch over 99.5% of our football matches, reassured that everything's okay. But it's still too many. We don't want to see 168 football matches that we suspect might have had a match manipulation. It's too many. So. It's a small percentage, but it's a lot of work and it keeps us busy.
Okay. Maybe now we had a little clearer understanding of that. So John, next to you, welcome. We of course we wish next time that you would be here to meet you in person. But I'm very excited to hear about the agreement, what you have now with SIGA. Can you explain that and what Epic Solution is offering us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd just like to echo my fellow panelists. Thanks to League Portugal for having us. And as you say, next time I hope I can be in the room with everybody and share the stage with our panelists. But so I think, Emanuel hit the nail on the head when he talked about the fact that we are all here aiming to create global solutions to a global issue. I think in terms of Epic's partnership with SIGA, it was a no-brainer for us because of that clear, aligned thinking about the fact that everybody within the sports ecosystem, whether it's teams, leagues, governing bodies, the operators or the service providers, has a role to play in making sure that we have a safe and sustainable industry. From Epic's perspective, we are an organization that's built and founded in lived experience of gambling-related harm. So our founder and CEO, Paul Buck, experienced his own quite severe 10-year gambling addiction, transacted the best part of about £5 million across more than 100 betting accounts. And as is so often the case with severe gambling addiction experiences, resulted in an attempt on his own life. And he had been working for Santander Bank and had been taking money from accounts at that bank to fund his gambling addiction for a large portion of the time that he experienced that, and ended up spending 2 years in prison, at which point he was reflecting on how he could help other people not end up in the same situation that he had ended up in. And that's ultimately where Epic was born, from a prison library, which is not an ordinary situation. And now fast forward a little over 10 years, we deliver our services in over 25 countries, operations in the UK, operations in the US. But one of the biggest industries that we deliver those services to is the sports industry. And we deliver those services through a range of consultancy propositions. We deliver training, education, and advisory services. And those services are aligned from pitch level. So we reference pitch level as delivering education sessions to athletes and staff to understand their relationship with gambling, the role that plays within the ecosystem of sport, and the importance that understanding that relationship has on protecting the integrity of the sport. And then we deliver training and consultancy services from board level down within teams, leagues, governing bodies, and operators, so that they understand the need to develop a kind of safe and protected environment when it comes to gambling related harm. And that they understand how to identify where there are vulnerabilities, whether that's around gambling addiction or whether it's around integrity breaches. And they understand how to interact effectively. They understand how to to create positive outcomes. And our partnership with SIGA is aimed at being able to provide that suite of services in a standardized way across the sporting ecosystem, so that in turn, we are driving for a safer and as I say, in turn, a more sustainable ecosystem when it comes to sport.
But I'm curious about the feedback, because it's a sensitive topic. So what can you say? Give us an insight about how are the reactions?
On the whole, reactions are positive, and I think part of that is because all of our education and our consultancy is underpinned by lived experience, whether that's lived experience of gambling addiction itself, or whether that's lived experience of our industry experts who have worked on this topic within the ecosystems within which we are delivering. I've been on the other side of the fence. So prior to being with Epic, I worked for a players association, and I was one of those individuals who'd stood in front of a room of athletes with my branded polo shirt on and went through the rules and regulations in a very black and white, compliance-focused way, and told an athlete or a group of staff, these are the rules, this is what you can and can't do. And I could see from the way their eyes glazed over, it was going over the heads of a lot of people in the room. The way that Epic delivers that is through somebody who has been in the shoes of the other people in that room. So a lot of our training and education is delivered by former athletes who've been through their own experiences of gambling addiction, their own experiences of being approached to fix matches. And in some cases, we have individuals who have been suspended for breaching integrity rules in a variety of different sports. And I think the fact that the individuals in the room can look in the eyes of somebody who's been in their shoes, who's been through their experiences, means that what we are trying to deliver and what we're trying to educate on really to land, and people understand and start to reflect on their own relationships with gambling or their own experiences within the sporting ecosystem when it comes to sports betting integrity. And the feedback on the whole is really positive.
Amazing. That's good to hear. Emanuel, I'm very curious about what's happening now in Brazil. I heard that we signed a huge deal with these partners, and I would like to share this.
Yeah, this one was not a deal in itself because there is no monetary value engaged. It's a service. That's what we do. We service the sport community. But it is a moment of massive transformation.
Yes.
Brazil is the last big market to open its sports competitions to betting and gambling. And we have seen experiences failing one after the other. I am critical about the European model because I think there is a lot of hypocrisy, there is a lot of smoke screens, and no one has the guts to tell the truth as it is. Controversial? Yes, but truthful and open to debate with anyone. Secondly, US. In US, it was not because we hadn't warned them. I warned them. I warned every CEO of every major sports league. But they thought, this is America, we're different model, and so far so good. Like the individual who's falling from a 10th floor building, reached the 5th, looks up and says, so far so good. The inevitable happened. The scandals, the suspicion, the mud in the newspapers, the accusations, and this is causing a traumatic impact into US sport, who's now is experiencing something which they have not prepared for because they look into the money. They were exuberant with the cornucopia of new income streams coming from the commercial exploitation of the sports betting market, but they neglected integrity. And those who have done something, they have done just by copying and pasting the European regulations, which had already proven to be insufficient to sustain the avalanche of challenges. So Brazil is really, I think, our last bullet to show that the regulatory model can work. And why do I say it can work? Because there is a number of improvements that have been introduced. For example, betting companies to receive the license from state, and we can discuss how it was before and the period during the former presidency and the kind of swamp that existed and created some promiscuous relationships and some challenges. But this government, and it's not that I'm involved politically or have any connection, which is zero, but they have taken the bull by the horns. Regulation is robust, is holistic, is comprehensive, and amongst the criteria that they set up to be fulfilled by the betting companies is that they need to be affiliated to an integrity organization. And that changed the whole game. That changed the whole game because in order to be a member of an integrity organization, like SIGA, for example, they have to comply with our universal standards. And our universal standards set the pace and the map for what should be proper, effective, coordinated approach, efficiently led, involving training, education, capacity building of all involved, and the close cooperation between public and private authorities and key stakeholders. So we are optimistic about the progress so far. We have seen how sports betting companies, they have restructured themselves in order to comply with the law. And I think they know what they have to gain by following this path, because Brazil is a massive, I wouldn't say even country, it's a continent. 220 million inhabitants, a vibrant, growing business community. You have São Paulo, which is in the south the equivalent to California in terms of brain power, in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of revenue generation. So they have everything to justify robust, holistic, effective, adequate regulation, coupled with training, education, capacity building, policies, proactive stance to avoid and prevent the vulnerabilities that we see in so many players and coaches, and of course, gambling addiction. Monitoring systems will be put in place. No system is perfect, but I think this is the best that I've seen so far. I have been involved in the French regulatory effort, which for me continues to be the most advanced. I have seen the Portuguese experience, which is a kind of homemade experience, taking into account the best it was at that time, but without the financial resources to invest as the French have done. And Brazil is learning from other countries' mistakes in terms of regulatory stance and all the policies engaged. Our relation with the government is solid. We have signed cooperation agreements with the government, with the Congress, with the Senate, with the major sponsors, with the major sports organizations, including CBF, who needs to do more and needs to be more proactive to deliver what they have signed on paper. But I feel that there is a new dawn, that there is a new cycle, that there is a new mentality, and it would be a shame if this did not work. But fortunately, we have reasons to believe it will.
I'm just curious, what do you think, where's this change coming from the governmental side?
The government needed to clean the act.
Okay.
Before, there was a gray area where sports betting companies was already active, offering bets, but they were not licensed by the competent regulatory authorities, meaning there was no rationale, there was no strategic approach to this. And since the government stepped in and enacted legislation, everything is falling into the right place. And now everyone understands that if they offer a product with integrity, if they run it with integrity, there will be more people trusting in what they're buying, in what they're putting their money in. This will generate more revenue streams that will inevitably have to be invested in sport to equip sports organizations to fulfill their share, delivering training, education, capacity building solutions, and engaging the services of other key stakeholders that have the knowledge, the expertise to help sport to move forward and safeguard its integrity, which means also to safeguard their commercial interests.
I mean, we are in 2025 almost, so should we talk then about trends as well, Affy? I'm curious, Can we say which are the main trends coming from sports betting integrity? What do we have in data? What technology is assisting that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, in terms of trends, if you look at match fixers as organised criminals, organised criminals have historically tended to be very good at adapting to whatever is put in place and getting round things. And so, you know, we're constantly seeing new trends. So one thing, for example, in football betting, I would say is there's been a notable trend from what we're seeing towards the manipulation of first half only betting markets. So that is when you're basically betting on the outcome of what's going to happen in the first half of a football match only and not the entire football match. Why is that? Several hypotheses for that, I suppose. One is there's obviously something money to be made in that. There's significant betting markets that are available on first half betting markets, first half only opportunities in a number of matches and competitions. Also, I would say it's probably easier to corrupt a player to manipulate just the first half rather than the entire game. Probably feel that they're not compromising, all their principles and ethics by doing so. But that's one shift that we've definitely seen growing over the last couple of years. I mean that's probably the main one that jumps out. There's definitely things to be aware of. I think the increase in popularity in the women's game over the years brings its own threats and opportunities, of course, but betting markets increasing in size. Like I said, criminals tend to exploit opportunities like that very quickly. So as stakeholders, we need to be wise to that and put in place what we can to tackle that as early as possible.
Where a lot of money is, you feel these people uncomfortable. These criminals, when they know you can catch them. Manuel,
yeah, I know you have
please,
you have pertinent questions for John, and I'm eager to listen to what he's going to say. But I just wanted to complement this because this is very poignant. We're talking about organized crime.
Yes.
Organized crime does not play by any rules. They play by their conveniences, and as Affy was saying, they will circumvent. They will stop at nothing, right? At every level. But I can be optimistic about the sports betting companies. We have announced 10 major sports betting companies in Brazil that have joined SIGA Latin America. You know why I'm confident? It's because they are following the rules. They are putting the mechanisms in place. And believe me, we look into every detail, including the ownership of these sports betting companies. And it's not just who sits on the board and who is visible. I'm talking about the ultimate beneficial owner. We track it until the last shareholder, and including the directors. And that is also a guarantee that if solutions are implemented, if there is political willingness and clear sight about this, we can prevent a number of threats from happening. But that is a constant fight. Mm-hmm. There is no room for distractions and to compromise.
So we have these organized crime scenarios versus gambling addiction, John. So when it comes to gambling addiction, again, what are your challenges? Like, what are you facing with Epic Solutions? Like, I understood your mission. What are also the challenges in the long term?
Yeah, so I guess what's important to note here is, they're not necessarily two separate situations. If an athlete is suffering from a severe gambling addiction and finds themselves in significant amounts of debt, the likelihood is that the kind of nefarious actors that want to influence matches will be able to find that out, and that then that's the most vulnerable character that they can go after to encourage that individual to fix matches. We saw a case in the US recently with the NBA and John Porter being suspended for life. And actually, you know, the acts that he had engaged in were driven by the gambling debts that he was being crippled by. And that's ultimately what we find a lot, is that those individuals who are engaging in match fixing or integrity breaches due to a gambling addiction, it's because of the debts that they find themselves in. And the lived experience athletes that we've got, some of them have been through that experience, exactly that experience. Some of them haven't ever fixed a match or engaged in any kind of corruption, but all of them to a person have said that if they were approached to do so when they were at the height of their gambling addiction, it would have been impossible for them to say no. But I think another big challenge that we're seeing when we look at it through the human lens of harm prevention is that there needs to be a collaborative approach to identifying those individuals and then how we support those individuals who have potentially found themselves in that situation. Because for an individual who knows that if I come forward and self-report for an integrity breach, I'm going to have the book thrown at me. The example with John Porter tells anybody else who's in that situation that I can't come forward about this. I can't risk there being a suspicion of me being involved in an integrity breach. And the first place that we ever go when there is a report of an athlete having a gambling addiction is, did they bet on their own sport? Did they influence a game that they played in? And we need to create an environment which allows athletes who are severely struggling with these situations to feel comfortable coming forward, to feel like they have a protected environment and a safe environment to be able to come forward so that they can get the support that they need before they find themselves in a situation where they are very much opened up to nefarious approaches to influence games. And we know that once an athlete has fallen foul of doing that once, then those organisations have got their claws in, and there's no turning back, and the problem only gets worse.
Exactly. So of course I have more questions, but I would like to interact with the audience. If the audience wants to interact, are there any questions I can take? Because we still have time. Otherwise, I just shoot the next question. Yeah.
Yes, I would like to ask Emanuel. Do you think that the model that was implemented in Brazil can be considered to be implemented in Europe or Americas?
I believe that there are important aspects that European governments, the Council of Europe, especially those who are at the helm of the implementation of the Macallan Convention, which sometimes I feel, was born already dead, because we don't see lots of traction there. But I think that there is an important component. This requirement that companies that apply to get the license from government to operate the sports betting operators have to be affiliated to an integrity organization. I think this is a game-changing requirement. And I don't see any reason why this is not implemented in Europe, in Portugal, in Switzerland, in Germany, in Spain, in the UK, because it strengthens the cocktail of measures and requirements that are aimed to safeguard integrity. And it's not just the aspects of prevention of criminal infiltration. And it's not even just the mechanisms to detect and prevent money laundering, which exists. It is also the protection of the consumers, and it's the protection of the players and the coaches and the whole entourage. Because it's not just the player who's vulnerable. The coach is vulnerable. The medical staff is vulnerable. Because if you know that there is a player who has an injury or he's not at his best, that can influence the whole betting landscape. So we need to be attentive, and we need to have a clear notion of what is relevant. And there is one big problem, including in this country. Battles are won before they are fought. I'm quoting Sun Tzu, but what does it mean? It means that we need to invest more in training, education, capacity building, starting by the athletes, at a younger age. They are the most vulnerable individuals. So what do you have here? You have a remarkable effort that is done by the Portuguese Football Association for a number of years, with a number of dedicated, committed individuals. And I applaud them. But tell me, how many other sports have this in place? Because the problem is, you cannot do this once. It's not a one-off. It's not once upon a time we had something for a Kodak moment, so we invite the press and we're doing this. It's not cosmetic. This has to be done as a must requirement, as a must policy, permanently, as part of the calendar, the daily routine, training, education, capacity building, starting by the most vulnerable individuals, must be followed, period. And there needs to be a clear coordination between the sport movement, and by the sport movement I mean the FAs, the leagues, the players' union, the families as well. The families require attention, and the public authorities. I have seen a number of multi-stakeholder bodies being created. It is important to understand what has been the progress. What is the progress? What is the direction of travel? What are the objectives? What are the priorities? Because we cannot afford the luxury of creating structures over structures, sound bites over sound bites, nice slogans after nice slogans, and without taking attention, without taking care of this. This is a silent killer. It's like a heart attack. It comes without a warning. So the sooner we are active and we act proactively, the better we'll be. And we are at the disposal of everyone who requires our collaboration. And by we, I mean Starlizard, I mean EPIC, I mean the whole global movement that we bring with over 200 organizations. We are ready to cooperate and do our best.
Can I just jump in on that? I mean, Emanuel, you're very correct. And coming from an organisation that is a bit on the ground with this, and we seek to work with many different sports on this, on sports integrity and anti-match fixing, we see two approaches to it. There's either the approach where they're very proactive and they want to go out and do something about a problem, or there's the put the head in the sand approach and pretend it's not happening. And so, to answer your question, yes, of course, the model would be applicable to other areas, but there has to be an appetite to have it, because some people don't want to know they've got a problem. Unfortunately, I've seen it all too many times over the last few years, where some governing bodies are just like, it's just too difficult. Yeah, we have a competition which we rely on for commercial success. It has to be successful. We make a lot of money from this, and any kind of smell of corruption about it isn't a good look, and it jeopardizes the revenue stream. So let's not make too much of a deal about this. Whereas other governing bodies are right. We need to cut this straight away so it doesn't become a problem. It depends on where you land and what you're going to hit.
And building on that, if I may use 30 seconds to send a message to the president of the Brazilian Football Confederation, I would like to tell him that the cooperation agreement that we signed in March, and 16 March this year, is not something that we have hanged on the wall. It's not a trophy. It's not something that we exhibit to show that we're doing our job. That is a living organism, and it has to be implemented. And this means that it's not just I have an agreement with a global leading organization in the field of sport integrity, or I have a service agreement with Starlizard or EPIC or Sport Radar or Genius, because that is not the whole job done. It does not stop there. Sports organizations have an indeclinable duty to take this seriously and proactively. And rather than signing MOUs and cooperation agreement, there is a huge amount of work to get done, and the sooner we start, the better for everyone.
Last 60 seconds to you, John. Your last statement.
Yeah, look, I think I'd echo everything we've just heard from Affy and Emanuel. The word who's coming up is proactive, and I can't emphasize that enough. this isn't something that can be dealt with retrospectively, and we're kind of seeing that across the UK and Europe to some extent, trying to address this retrospectively. But it also needs to be done collaboratively. I think, what SIGA are doing in terms of being that alliance that's bringing the component parts together to kind of protect sport at every level is exactly what's needed. That's the only way that we can really do this effectively, is if the right people are brought in at the right time to deliver the right services, and we do that collectively. And I think Emanuel's hit the nail on the head, that working with an integrity alliance who is bringing those component parts together to provide the right services to organisations, and ensuring that they are doing everything that they need to do. That's the way that we protect the integrity of sport, protect the athlete and the organisations involved with sport, and in turn, to Affy's point, these leagues need to succeed. But what we're talking about here is creating a sustainable industry. The safer it is, the stronger the integrity, the more sustainable that industry will be.
That's the perfect closing. Thank
Well
you
done.
for so much, John, for joining us. Thank you so much, Affy and Emanuel, and thank you all for listening. So that's it.
It's okay.
Done.
Thank you.
Thanks
Well
to
done.
you.
I will just ask you guys to wait just a few seconds because we have some gifts of Liga Portugal for you.
Oh,
Thank
you
you,
so much.
Julie, Affy, Emanuel, and
Very
John.
kind. Thank you. Thank you.
And another applause for them for this presentation. Thank you so
Hey
much.
John, you're not on air anymore.
I like
Thank you
the
so
poster.
much for the panel. Very interesting.
Obrigado.
Yeah.